Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another episode. Today we sit down with Steph Yesil. Steph is a former teacher transitioned into a career coach. And you may know her as Elevated Careers, or you may be following her on LinkedIn. Well, in this interview, we sit down and discuss why Steph left teaching, what led her to the journey of where she is today, and what tips and tricks can she give you from interviews to resumes to networking on how to make your transition from the classroom to a world outside a reality. So we hope that you tune in, turn it up, and as always, let's get ready to do this. Hi everyone, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Leena Marie Saleh, the Edtech Guru. I want to thank you so much for spending time with me on this journey, for all the support that you give me, and for following along. Don't forget to hit the thumbs up button, subscribe, and let's get ready to do this. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Teacher Transition Expert Series. Today, we are joined by Steph Yesil. Hi, Steph. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Leena. Thanks for asking. How about yourself?
Doing well, and I'm so happy to have you on. It's been a long time coming, so yeah, it's going to be an exciting episode, and I can't wait to share your wealth of knowledge with our audience.
I'm looking forward to it too. Let's get into it.
All right. So, to kick things off, you were an educator. So, tell us a little bit about your teaching career, and then we'll discuss, obviously, being a teacher transition expert, how you transition out of the classroom and what you're up to today.
Yeah, absolutely. So back in, feels like a million years ago, back in 2011, I became a Teach for America teacher. And those who are familiar with Teach for America, you don't get to choose where you go. You don't get to choose what you teach. You just say, I want you to send me where my skills can be used. And I was sent to Eastern North Carolina. And I went from teaching university level political science to fifth grade math and social studies and science. So I got to be Miss Frizzle for a little while. That was a fantastic time. And I ended up extending my 2-year commitment into a fifth year and then made my transition during my fifth year of teaching.
Okay. Wow. Did you know that I also taught math and science in fifth grade as well?
I knew we would get along just fine. There it is.
Just so everyone knows, Steph and I have a lot of parallels that we'll bring up here in a few minutes. But so you mentioned that you extended to your fifth year and then you decided to make a transition out of the classroom. So, what was it that made you want to leave teaching?
I actually never intended to be a teacher for my full-time career. I had a 5-year plan when I first got in. And it was one of those things that I wanted to get enough ground level experience in the classroom, especially in the highest need districts. And I worked for several districts in those few years because ultimately, are you ready for this? I was going to be the Secretary of Education someday. And in order to have such a high level role, I didn't want to be a hypocrite who would get into a really big position and not be able to speak to the nuances of day to day life for the people I was serving. Now, obviously, I didn't become the Secretary of Education because part of that 5-year plan was gain enough experience and then move out and do really big things to help systemically. And I decided, rather than going the political route, that I could have a much bigger impact in the corporate route. Less bureaucracy, less red tape, and more kind of let's get it done right now impact. So I ended up going the corporate route, and I've always had an entrepreneurial itch. So that was my next step, 5 years in the classroom. I left a little bit earlier than 5 years because the right opportunity came along midway through, when I entered my fifth year, and I just got brave and said, all right, I'm going to go for it. Right now is the time. And then I thought, all right, one day I'm going to build a business. And I know in my heart of hearts, I'm going to be supporting people who need what I need right now. So I'm going to get as much corporate experience as I can. And so, yeah, I got the opportunity. I moved into corporate and I've been building skills and keeping track of everything I've been doing since then to build elevated careers.
Which is a great story. And I want to step back just like a little bit. And I want to talk about, so you had mentioned giving others the skills to be able to make that transition, basically a reality is what we like to say. So, what what sorts of things did you find when you were like, okay, so you had your 5 year plan and you're like, this is what I want to do. And it sounds like, right at that, like little bit before the 5 years, you had the right transition opportunity. So
Mhm.
what were you finding when you were, you're in the classroom, you're doing all the things, you want to go to corporate, but what sorts of things were you finding yourself kind of stuck up against being an educator, transitioning to that corporate world, which is often very hard for educators to understand, imagine, figure out where they even go, which I know that's why you build elevated careers. But taking that
Mhm.
step back, kind of what sorts of things were you feeling like you were kind of running into?
Yeah. So imposter syndrome. I mean, I know that's such a common thing that people say, and you're probably rolling your eyes hearing, like, okay, here's another one. No, it's real, it's valid. And even when you have the best plan and the best of intentions, so much of your career success as you move forward depends on what others think of you and if they decide that they want to hire you. And so as I started really getting to that point where it was time to apply for other roles and start really planning my exit, trying to figure out, one, what in the world is out there for me? What can I do, with this background that's multifaceted? I have a political science background, I have an education background, I have an international education background, and now I'm a math and science teacher and I know about Title One, and I did technology, and it becomes overwhelming. And so what I was up against was, I think it can be distilled into what I hear so many people say is, I can do so much. What is it that I focus on next? And how can I make somebody see that worth? So it was figuring out, one, what I wanted to do and what I could do. Two, how can I get people to believe me that I'm the right corporate worker for them? And three, it was timing. When do I leave? Do I leave now and deal with the guilt of leaving students mid-year? Do I wait until the summer when it's harder? I mean, really, all the big things that I think educators timelessly have to face, I definitely had those exact same emotions and challenges.
Yeah, I think, and that's exactly how it is. I've talked to many educators, some who have left in the middle, some who have left not in the middle. And it's just like, how do you make those steps? And I think the thing about it is you just have to do it. You just have to put one foot in front of the other and kind of figure out that process. So,
Mhm.
narrowing down what you wanted to do, how did you? So, you knew you wanted to go to corporate, but what sorts of things did you wrestle with or, you know, to figure out, okay, I am a teacher. I do have 9,000 skills and skill sets. How do
Yeah.
I water it down to what direction I want to go to? And how did you make that choice? Because you made the transition before all of these resources and things were kind of available,
Mhm.
right? We kind of did the transition sort of at the same time. So, what sorts of things did you lean into to, I don't know, go?
Awesome question. Awesome question, Lena. So, really, in the beginning, I let the market guide my efforts. Really, I did what I think everybody intuitively does. You start searching for jobs. The first thing, you start searching for jobs. What's available? What's out there? Who's hiring? You think about the companies that you use in your classroom and you start researching who's hiring amongst those. And so I started there, search for jobs around the edtech world that I could do. And I started letting that define what kind of the box that I put myself in, so to speak. And whether or not that was limiting, now looking back, I think I could have been much more open about what was available to me, but I felt this urgency to make a move. And so really I let the market tell me, okay, well, assessment developers are in demand right now, content developers in demand, technology specialists in demand, whereas instructional design and I'm trying to think, professional development, like those were a little bit more flooded and it was a little bit more, they were a little harder to find. So I started saying, okay, these are the roles that are available. And of the roles that are available, these are the things that I feel like I can do. I really took a peek at the job descriptions. And then I narrowed down, of these 5, 10 things that I found that are really interesting to me. I knew I didn't have all the time in the world to apply to a million different roles. And so I said, okay, I'm going to really focus on these two titles because I have, as you said, I have these 9,000 things I'm good at. I need to cherry pick of those 9,000 things, what are the things that are most relevant to getting somebody who needs me to do this specific job? What's going to capture their attention? So, yeah, so I started with the market and then I thought, okay, based on what the market needs, what skills do I have to meet those needs? And then I use that to guide my application materials. So, got my resume, even if math and science. Well, my very first role outside of the classroom was a mathematics content developer for high stakes tests. I didn't mention science at all on my resume. I did it, but they didn't need to know that. So I kept it really focused on math. Now I applied to a lot of other different companies as well and made sure that my materials were tweaked accordingly. But then once I started to get a little bit of traction, started to get some initial screenings, that's when I started networking. And I kind of secretly started reaching out to team members because back then I didn't know that that was an acceptable thing to do, to try and like gather intel. It almost felt like cheating. Like, hey, can you give me the answers to the test? I'm really excited about this particular interview I have coming up. And so now I know that that's all totally fine, but I got some really great insight from folks while I was networking. And while I was going through all of these motions, while I was refining my perspective, while I was keeping a finger on the pulse of what the market needed, I kept applying. I didn't stop applying until there was dry ink on a contract. So it was just a matter of, as you said earlier, you just have to get started. And getting started means what's available and what do I want to do.
Yeah. And that's always like a hardest thing I think for a lot of teachers is just you see it on LinkedIn. I always say like you don't need 1,000 titles in your name. You also don't
No.
need to be putting a post together that says, "Oh, I'm interested in instructional design and curriculum development and customer success and sales and this and that," because that just means you just like don't have a focus. And so it's really important that you are
Mhm.
intentionally focusing on just a few areas. One, you're going to burn yourself out. Like how it's just like trying to work out and then trying to run a marathon at the same time as learning how to do a triathlon. Like you just can't do all of the things like at once. You need to really dial it down and be like, these are my areas of focus and this is the direction I need to go into. And I
That's
think a lot of
hard.
people,
That's hard when you're
yeah.
desperate. You feel like you
Hmm.
have to do all of those things. And
Hmm.
so that's why I'm so glad you exist, is that you are here to continually remind folks it's okay to slow down, to get straight on what is important rather than feeling like you have to do everything right now. Like that's desperation speaking sometimes. That's not your best self. And I love that you spread the message of here's how to be your best self. So thank you on behalf of everybody you help, Leena.
Oh, well, thank you. Obviously, you do the same thing, or we wouldn't be sitting here having this conversation. So, we also appreciate you as well. Okay, so now you dial it in, you transition into the corporate space, but we know that you didn't stay in the corporate space, and now you've delved into entrepreneurship and really helping teachers through elevated careers. So, can you share a little bit about the reasoning behind building your brand?
Yeah, definitely. So through all of my corporate roles, everything that I did was teacher facing, was educator facing, and I always was in a position to gather feedback or be in a position to actually train educators. And literally every role that I had for 8 years, every single time I was in front of teachers, it could have been 3 teachers and it could have been 300 teachers. At the end of whatever it was we were doing, I had people waiting for me on the side without fail, whispering, how do I do that? I want to make a bigger impact. How did you do it? What did you use? Who did you speak to? And I found myself emailing and sharing my business card and saying, reach out to me. Absolutely. I'll chat with you. And I realized that the questions were similar over and over and over. And they were the ones that I dealt with. And I feel like I started realizing the world could be so much more effective if people who felt a pull or a calling to work on something that's world building were given the support that they needed to be in the right place for them at the right time. And educators are some of the most brilliant, selfless, hardworking, just adept at so many things that if they're not meant to be in the classroom anymore, I don't believe that they should be guilted into staying in the classroom. They can make the world a better place, really doing anything that's world building. And so all of these resources, all of these guides that I was just kind of building one off for people, creating all of this advice that I was sharing, I really started recording it and just collecting it because why not, right? If it can help, and these are the resources that I wish I had, I'll go ahead and I'll share them more broadly. And so I started sharing them more broadly and got traction, got traction, got traction. And Leena, in the last, gosh, 8 months, I've gained almost 20,000 followers just from these things, just from the resources that I created just to support one or two people here or there. And it's just such a broad need. And so I thought, you know what? There is a huge need for this, and I want to be the helper that dedicates myself full time to helping the helpers of the world. And so Elevated Careers was born, and I held my breath. I took a jump, and I haven't looked back. I have loved every second of creating this. I wake up every day knowing that I get to have critical conversations with world builders.
I love that. And I think that's important, and that's a differentiator between there are a lot of people on LinkedIn or a lot of services or things like that, but I think it's finding a lot of people are like, well, how do I know who to go with or how to work with someone? And I think it's the passion. You need to really understand that that person is passionate about supporting you. And I love that you're calling teachers world builders. I don't think that a lot of people will say it in that way. And I think that that's a really important distinction. And I hope that other people can feel the passion of what you're building and what you're doing.
Thank you. Well, more than that, too, it started as a passion, but I'm so glad you said that. I actually shy away from that word a little bit because I believe we use it in a way that it means something, but it all too often for educators, it falls on deaf ears because it's
Mm-hmm.
almost like it's one of those words that everybody uses now.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe, I know, and you know, teachers are passionate people. But what does that mean to be passionate? Does being passionate mean you're effective? And that's where we get into a little bit of gray area. And sometimes the answer is yes, sometimes the answer is no. And so, yes, Elevated started as a passion, but I have moved into always asking, is anything that I put out tactical?
Mm.
Anything that you're going to see from me is going to be actionable. It's going to be what's next. It's so what? Yeah, that's the passion part. So what? My part that I love to specialize in is what now? And doing so unapologetically because there's always a way.
I love
And
that.
I
Doing
think I
so
think if teachers
unapologetically.
can adopt that. Oh, I'm sorry, I
Mhm.
talked over you.
Oh,
Go
no, you're
ahead.
good. I was just saying, I love that you're saying doing that unapologetically. Like, I think that's the most important. I think being authentic is one of the defining factors to, you know, with a little passion built in, but the defining factor is that authenticity that you're bringing to the table.
And that's what I want all educators I ever support to bring to the table. Yeah, be passionate, 1000%. I will never, ever throw a damp cloth on passion. But in order to become tactical and actually make the transition, how are you going to use that passion to get a really tall ROI for any company you're going to work for? And for those who don't know what ROI is, return on investment. They're investing in you and your skills. How are you going to help them essentially make money? Which I know is a dirty word, but that's the reality of the situation. Businesses are out to exist, and they can only exist when they are providing a service or a product that makes the world better. And in order to do that, you need funding. And so the question becomes, hey, teachers, how are you going to turn your passion into something that's going to help grease our wheels as a company? So essentially, it's moving from passion to tactics every single time.
Yep. Yes. ROI, always the tricky word that seems to be, but it's also what you're doing in the classroom, right? You're giving a return on investment to
Yeah.
students. Like, what are you building? You're building world builders. So, what are they going to be doing in the world? So, it's the same concept, just not with an exchange of funds, I guess you would say. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
So, what are some of the most common reasons that teachers struggle? So, they've gone through, they're doing their resumes, they go into their first interview. I had the same experience, but what is the reason for why teachers are struggling to make it past the interview stage when transitioning to a corporate role?
Yeah. So it's because they don't have their foundational stories down. Again, something that you're going to just Google and search, right? Google search and find is when you're asked questions, the simple questions. Tell me about yourself. You don't have a tightly aligned narrative of why you're the perfect fit for that role. All too often, people will give a really long answer about all of these amazing things you've done professionally your whole life. But what people want, what hiring managers and recruiters want to see and hear is, do you understand how you can translate all of those experiences into what job they need you to do? So that's the first big obstacle is people don't want generalists, they want specialists when you're going for a particular role. And then really kind of the general answer to that is your preparation can be improved. So do you know enough about the company to speak to it? Do you make it enough about the company and about them? Or are you making it more about you and saying, hey, look at me. I have all of these great skills. I really hope that you see a good fit, rather than taking the bull by the horns and saying, I'm a great fit for you. I've done my research, and here are all the great ways that I've already accomplished what you need to have accomplished. And if I don't have a certain amount of experience, here's how I've already addressed that so I can hit the ground running on day one. So it's just a matter of kind of the psychology of interviews that I feel like educators can tighten up.
Yeah, I agree. Having been on the hiring managing manager side, part of the hiring team, that's the mistake I always see with teacher transitioners or really any person coming into an interview is they haven't done their research. They talk about the role and how they fit the role, but they don't have not done enough research about the company itself. And so when they're making claims, you can tell honestly it's bullshit and that it's not like real. And if you're
Yeah.
already making that up, that's not even setting a good it's not setting you on a good ground or a good foundation. So building that foundation is really important.
Yeah. Well, another thing to that point, too, if you even step back to the role itself, here's something I've seen. It's sure people sometimes don't research enough about the company and the mission, and there's generic language such as, I want to support a mission driven organization such as yours. Well, do you know what our mission is? I mean, that's great. Yeah, nobody's questioning that you want to support a mission driven organization, but what is it about that company's mission that you love? What is it about their values? What's the intersection of their values with yours? But even when you're talking about the role, here's a common challenge, a common issue that I've been seeing pop up a little bit more, and that's confusing two different roles. So if you're lucky enough to get, I shouldn't say lucky enough, you make your own luck in many ways in securing an interview. But the thing you don't want to do is go into an interview for an instructional designer position and start talking about content development because you think they're the same thing. I see folks confuse PD with L&D, thinking
Mm.
it's the same thing. I see people confusing customer service representative with customer success manager. See, these things, they all sound so similar. And so the assumption is, oh, they're the same thing, just different titles. And that's not true. You have to know the nuances of the actual role you're applying for. And that seems like such common sense. And I understand that educators are so inundated with the million things that they can do and the million skills that they have and the amazing background chock full of experience. What it comes down to is, do you actually really truly understand the role that you are interviewing for? And if you cannot very clearly articulate how you fit the job description for that role, and you go into it making assumptions about what you think that role is about, you're immediately shooting yourself in the foot and you're not going to make it
Mhm.
past that first or second interview.
Nope, and that's the shame, but that's the important part about making sure that you're practicing that piece. I think that's the most undervalued thing when making a transition is practicing that about me question and how it relates to that specific role. Me myself included, if I were to go to a new company and decide, I need to make sure that I'm doing my research too. That doesn't just fall on like a brand new teacher transitioner or somebody who's career switching. That applies to every single person for any role that you ever interview for. That is a tip that will last you. That is a timeless skill that you need to have in your pocket.
Oh,
Yeah. So, what are some ways that somebody can make a strong first impression in the first few minutes of an interview?
ooh, I love that. I love that question. So, what you need to do is, as I said before, have your initial narratives really, really tightened up. Okay. Do your research and know what normal questions are asked. Tell me about yourself. Why this company? And here's the thing. So simple. When you have that prep, when you have that knowledge, you're going to sit straighter, you're going to come across more confident, and you're going to be armed with knowledge. I mean, the trite saying is knowledge is power, and it is never more true than in an interview. So, what you really want to do, the simple things is, of course, pre-interview, do your prep. And when you actually make it into the interview, what you want to do is have a really strong presence, right? So, if you're going to do this on Zoom, log in early, make sure everything's working, make sure your camera's working, make sure your microphone's working. The last thing you want to do is jump on and be in a position where you're interviewing for a role that uses technology and immediately demonstrate you don't know how to use that technology. Even though we know you know how to do it, like get on early, troubleshoot early, make sure that's set. Once the technical pieces are covered, start confident, have a good posture, smile. I'm sorry if that offends anybody because no, you don't have to smile, but it's nice to, interview a happy person. If it's appropriate and you're in person, give a firm handshake and make sure that you use the names of the interviewers right away. Everybody loves hearing their names. So that's kind of a psychology backed interview tip that like these little things will stick in the minds of your interviewers. Because a lot of the time interviewers will see really nervous people who are just focused on kind of like the studying, like the cramming that they did prior to the interview. And you can tell they're just impatiently like waiting to get these foundational questions. And so they're only thinking about that rather than making a genuine connection with that interviewer, right? So when they introduce themselves, when they say their names, actually say, "It's nice to meet you, blank. Thanks so much for having me here." And that just makes things so respectful and smooth, and you make an immediate connection. And make sure you also show enthusiasm, right? I'm excited to learn more about this team. I'm really looking forward to getting to know you and getting to know your needs. I think another thing is when people enter interviews, again, it's a test and they're going to answer questions and it's all receive questions, transmit answers. And that's not it. An interview needs to be conversational. So practice beforehand. Yeah.
Yeah, I would also tag on to that. You said log in early, that sort of thing. Get a Zoom account. Record yourself
Yes.
practicing and watch it back because you'll be really surprised. I still practice in front of the mirror even before I'm doing sometimes a podcast. Sometimes I'll walk my son and I'm saying the things I'm going to say, practicing them out loud because
Really.
practice is helpful when you're in those situations. So, because you're going to be nervous and you're going to forget things. So, the more that you practice, the more that you can't just be a football player and show up to the NFL and have like a game. That's not how it goes. It's many, many years of practice and reps that you're taking. So the more reps that you can take, the better you're going to come across, the more comfortable you're going to be, the more your shoulders are going to be dropped, and you're not going to be tight and shaky and nervous. Always easier said than done. You will have nerves, but you're going to have all of that already there. So it's like just recalling, oh, I've already practiced this. Okay, I've got this. And you can just take a deep breath and relax.
If you want to be a badass,
Yeah.
like forget the language, but you want to be a cool person who moves into a cool role, right?
Hmm.
You don't want to show up that nervous person. Like look in the mirror and be cool. Like practice the persona of the person you want to become and get yourself to act like the person you want to be and show up as that person. And I'm not going to say fake it till you make it. No, you can make it with the person you want to be, with the persona you want to have right now. I mean, it's so easy to find the questions that are going to be asked. It's just a matter
Hmm.
of what's my delivery. And
Yep.
it is uncomfortable the very first time you practice for yourself, in front of yourself. in front of a mirror, recording yourself. Nobody likes the sound of their own voice. And I'm just going to tell you, just flat out, get over it.
Yeah.
Get
Doesn't
over
get
it.
better. I'll say that.
Nope. Nope. Get over it, because it's not about the sound of your voice. It's about, are you comfortable saying the things that you want to say?
Hmm.
Just practice.
Yeah.
Such low-hanging fruit. It's so easy to do.
It's kind of like when you're in front of your students. The first day, you're like a bit nervous in front of them, whatever. And then as each day goes on, you're just more comfortable and more comfortable because you're just like taking the reps. And if anyone walks in, you're not going to be nervous, hopefully, because you know what you're doing and you have those like skills. So I think it just like if somebody were to record you in your classroom, you just gotta, it's just like the same concept, just in a different setting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Couldn't agree more.
So I know you're really big about psychology backed tactics. So what are some of those tactics that teachers can use to within the interview process?
Like we said before, so many people show up and think that it's a matter of they're going to ask me questions and I'm going to give them answers. But there are actually small things that you can do during the interview to influence your interviewer. And since you've been on the interviewing side, I've also been on the interviewing side, and these are some of the most amazing things that I saw people do that I started using when I was interviewing, and they always worked for me. So Leena, keep me honest here. Let me know if you agree or disagree with these. But the first of the 4 tactics that I'm going to share with you are, it's called the similar to me effect, or the similarity attraction bias. So essentially what you do in this is you research your interviewer, right? So when you have an opportunity to find out who you are going to be interviewing with, you might get a name. Learn something about that interviewer. Look them up on LinkedIn, see what they're posting. Where did they go to school? Where did they work? What are they talking about? And rather than coming right out of the gate saying, "I looked you up," you subtly include something about yourself that happens to align 100% with something of theirs that is based on what you researched. And what this similarity attraction bias says is it's going to activate their sense of familiarity and trust towards you. Oh, this person is also like, I'm in good company. So that's the first one. It's so simple. Research, find a similarity. Don't lie, don't force it. Don't see, that they went to school and then you say, "Oh yeah, I went to this school," when you didn't. That's not what I'm talking about. A commonality, like just find any commonality and find a way to just kind of subtly mention it when you're getting to know folks. The second psychology tip that I love is social proof, or what's called priming. Okay. When we say social proof, what we mean is you have looked up about the company. You've looked up about their missions. You found out about their values. And so you are going to use this research, but not hide the fact that you've done your research. You're going to prime any answer that you have that they ask with, "Well, based on my research." Start your answers with, "Based on my research, this is important to the role, so I'll tell you about a time that I fit the bill." Or if they say, "Well, what do you know about the company?" "Well, based on my research." "What makes us different than competitors?" "Well, based on my research." Immediately, it feels so good to the interviewer that you've done that work beforehand, that you care enough to know that this is the company you want to work for, and these are the values you want to align with, and this is how you want to spend your day. It's going to signal that you know about their goals and challenges, not just, "Hey, please give me a job." And like I said, I use 2 terms here, social proof and priming. The social proof part is you are informed. You want them to see you as an informed person, because that's the kind of person they want to hire. And then you prime them to see you as a solution to their needs.
Yeah. And I'll just chime in on that one. That is really, really important when you are in an interview. One, because as a teacher, you feel like often you don't necessarily have the right experience when you're first making the transition into that role. And so if you have something that you can relate and you can say, "Oh, well, I've done the research," it's showing that you have initiative. And so we know that you can learn and that you're going to be adaptable and flexible. And so as an interviewer who's interviewing you, it's really something that's going to trigger that thing like, "Oh, okay, I can trust this person to make sure that they have the skills. Despite their skills, they can take those skills that they know and they can transfer them to this job because they've done some of the initial work, and that shows me It just shows me a lot about your character and what you can bring to the table.
Yeah. And I'm going to piggyback off of that. So it's one thing to show that you've done your research, especially in these moments when you don't have a specific experience that they need or they're looking for. You can do all the research in the world and say, well, based on my research, this is what's important to you. But that only goes so far. I have another tip for you that I just thought about that is going to help you answer that question. When they flat out ask you, do you have experience with this? Right? There was a client of mine several months ago that needed experience. They were asking if they had experience with InDesign. It's an Adobe product, and they
Mm-hmm.
did not. I mean, as an educator, you aren't typically diving into InDesign to create your own, right? Your own margins and your own content. And what I advised this person to say moving forward, because the answer initially was, no, no, I don't have experience with that. The way that you address that question, having to answer when you don't have that experience, is kind of do a combination of this social proof, this priming, and here is your sample script. You know what? My previous roles didn't place a ton of emphasis on InDesign, but I understand based on my research that that's really important for this role. And so to prepare, I've already researched and started getting my hands dirty in some InDesign products. I've been taking some courses online to upskill. And so far I've done X, Y, and Z. And what I'm moving on to next to learn is this next thing, so that if I am given the opportunity to work on this team, I'm confident I can hit the ground running, no problem.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that's so much better than unfortunately no. But again, that requires you to do that social proof. It requires you to
To
put
do
in
the
that
research of the
research.
job description, which is what we talked about earlier. And I think oftentimes teachers, or not even teachers, but just anyone who's rocking up to an interview, they often seem surprised when you ask them about those types of specific tools. If a specific tool, here's a tip. If they take the time to write a very specific tool InDesign, I don't know, it could be Photoshop, I don't know, whatever tools it is that they're deciding to use. If they take the time to
Salesforce.
list it out, they are more than likely going to ask you if you have experience in that tool. You don't have to have the experience. Listen, as an educator, especially if you were techie, you probably have a ton of other tools that you've worked with. You can also leverage that and say, hey, I've actually worked with Canva, and I've done many other tutorials. I've actually taught teachers how to do it. So I know that if you do decide to work with me, you can, play the field here a little bit and say, I know that I love to upskill. And that's something that prior to starting this role, I will make sure that I'm upskilled prior to day one. You can say something around that too, just saying, like, yeah, I actually have ABC experience with this and this tool, which as the interviewer, I'd be like, oh, okay, you don't really have much experience, but I know that you have the willingness to learn and you've committed to me that you're going to do this. So you do
Right.
need, that is part of doing the priming or the social proofing. If it's listed, it's going to be asked. That's just the plain and simple truth about it.
Mhm. And so many people feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
It's almost like I've given this advice to some clients, and a few times I've heard, but isn't that lying? Well, let me ask you, are you genuinely learning about the product? Are you putting it on yourself to get invested in your own upskilling? So let me, I put it back on anyone who asks that question. Does it only count when someone else assigns you the task? Does it only count when someone else teaches you? No. You can self-teach, you can research, you can assign yourself work, because if you wait for someone else to assign it to you, it's already too late. So no,
Very,
the
very, very
answer is
true.
no, it's not lying if you are actually getting to know the ins and outs of the specific resources, experiences, softwares, hardwares that they want you to use. Yeah, really, really good points, Leena.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Okay, now, what is a powerful interview technique that most people overlook, but can dramatically increase your chance of getting hired?
This one is so simple. Send a thank you note. Send a thank you note. And I don't mean a generic, like, thanks for interviewing me. I look forward to hearing from you. No, no, no. You need to actually include a tidbit that they shared from your conversation. Make it relevant to the things that they share to demonstrate that you've listened. As a matter of fact, I have some templates that I'm more than happy to share with folks. And I actually have included all of this in my Career Change Accelerator. How you can actually say, hi, thanks so much for meeting with me. Now that I've learned more about X role, I am even more excited about what the company is doing. I wanted to send some quick highlights of the intersection of what we talked about, and I invite you to let me know if there's anything that I can clarify. Really excited to hear from you. And here's a little tip. If the interviewer shares anything personal with you, you might write a postscript. I don't know. Sometimes you have a great conversation with an interviewer. Sometimes they'll share something personal about their life. Put a PS. If they mention, they have a kid or that's X age, or they're going to Disney World soon, or I don't know, you can say, PS, that thing you told me about, here's a cool resource that might help. That kind of thank you note demonstrates that you are human, that you are warm, that you have follow through. And it is such an easy win.
It is. And it really does go a long way, I think. I think we forget about the personalization and we become like machines a lot of times. And I think the postscript can actually be the difference maker in some of that. So I think it just shows that you're paying attention in that process.
Of course, everybody wants to work with somebody who they know they're going to get along with full time. Like, it's not just about, can you do the job? It's, do I want to work with you?
And that could be the difference. Sometimes you can have all of the skills and skill sets, but sometimes I can't tell you how many times people have looked so amazing on paper. I've Googled them. I've went to their LinkedIn. I've checked out all
Mhm.
their stuff. I'm pretty good at stalking, so I like to find out all the things. And then they show up to the interview and they're like cold. They're kind of like abrasive. Maybe they just seem really great on paper and then they actually didn't do their research. They kind of just don't match. Either way, they don't match. Either they're like too aggressive and they're like cold and just like no thank you, or they haven't done their research and I'm like, okay, well actually I think you might have just blown smoke when you wrote this stuff. Like somebody helped you do this and this is very, very clear. And so I think having that personalization piece is really, really important
And
aspect of the
practice.
yeah.
Yes, and practice. Even if
Yes.
you do get somebody else to help you, practice and make it your own. Make
Hmm.
it your voice. Don't wing it. And those people that you saw that were maybe too aggressive or too cold, maybe they were just like nervous and they're really
Hmm.
scared because they didn't practice. Practice.
Yep.
Please, everybody watching this,
Yeah,
practice. And if
there's
you
no
don't want to
other
practice
words
with
that we can
yourself,
say. Hmm.
get help. Get help. Call people, reach out. There are so many of us who want you to succeed. We'll help you practice. Okay.
Yep. Yep. I couldn't agree more with you. Okay, so we've talked really a lot of things about, the interview and how to nail the interview and doing your research and all of those other pieces. Something I've been seeing a lot of lately on LinkedIn, and I just like to bring LinkedIn up anytime I can,
Mhm.
is I'm seeing like a lot of like, I should get this job because I have ABC skill, or maybe like a negativity around like a recruiter or any of those types of things. But I've also been getting a lot of messages like almost demanding that I give them information around
Mhm.
certain things, like, oh, you made this, so you are like beholden to give me this information. Or, that kind of like almost like an entitlement type of piece that I've kind of seen. But I think more than anything, there's something that's really essential to getting you ahead and to getting you that interview. And I would think that you would agree with me. It's obviously the resume, it's obviously making sure your LinkedIn looks really great. It's all of those like pieces, but there's one missing component. You mentioned it in the beginning, and I'll mention it now. And I personally think the way to get ahead in any of job market, anything that we do in life is to network. So, do you have any tips or like tricks for somebody who is trying to I get this thing like, I don't know how to network. I
Mm.
just whatever. You
It's
do
tough.
actually because you do
It's
it every day when you interact with anyone that is a networking opportunity. So,
mm,
what are some tips or things that you have for somebody who is trying to get their foot in the door? They've done thousands of applications, all of those things, but they've missed this one vital component, and that's that networking piece. So, how do
yeah.
you think people can best leverage that or any tips or tricks around that?
An amazing question. So I'll give you, this is a twofold answer, and I'll try and be as concise as possible because we could do hours and hours and hours about the proper way to network. But number one, when a lot of people network, I also get similar messages from people who are desperate, who are angry, who they're dealing with trauma from the classroom sometimes, and the trauma from feeling like they're being rejected, and finally when they come to the people who have dedicated their professional lives to supporting, it's almost like I'm placing all of this on you, and I'm desperate now, and I just need you to help me. So I'm expecting you to help me. And I get that. I definitely get that. And I think the biggest challenge that folks have is when they reach out to me and say, I've done all of these things. I've reached out to people, no, nobody's given me any traction. Nobody's given me the attention that I know I deserve. I say, okay, well, send one of your messages that you've been using. Forward one of the messages that you use to network, to try and reach out. Cold networking, right? And that's what we're referring to here, cold networking, not warm networking. And more often than not, the message that I see is, hello, name, with blank many years of experience in education and a variety of skills. I'm confident I can bring a lot to your mission-driven team. I would love the opportunity to talk with you more about anything you see that would be a good fit for me. Hope to hear from you soon. And that is, yes, you're checking a box when you send a message like that of networking. Yes, you're reaching out, but is that really networking, or is that more like sending out a non-resume resume, right? That's more like saying, I am tired, I don't know what I'm a fit for, and I'm going to ask you, stranger, if you can tell me what I'm a good fit for. And truth talk, nobody has time for that. Nobody has time to do your homework for you. And also, people who are in a position to put you forward need certainty. Everybody wants a leader. Everybody wants somebody to believe in. And in order to get people to believe that you are the right person to put a name forward or to have a conversation with, they need to see you as somebody who has a clear understanding of who you are and what you might have to offer that person. Right? So rather than sending out just kind of these copy paste generic messages, what I always recommend is when you reach out to a cold connection, meaning somebody, for those who are not familiar with the term cold connection, it's somebody that you don't have a previous relationship with, right? Maybe that's somebody that you've looked up in a company that you're interested in joining or learning more about, or somebody who has a role that you're really excited to maybe move into and you want to pick their brain. Never, ever, ever in your first message lead with an ask. This is my biggest piece of advice. Never give the person you're trying to build a relationship with homework. Because I promise if you ask them to spend their precious time doing work for you in the beginning, they're not going to take you seriously.
Or answer, more than
Or
likely.
answer. Yeah. You might get crickets. You might also get some nasty people, and that's not going to make you feel good. That's not okay because you're trying your best and you're just trying to say, hey, everybody, I need help. Like, I've been really bad at asking for help, and now I'm asking for help. And then people shut you down or they just ignore you altogether. So the way that you can get a lot more traction is when you first send your message, you need to do your research, just like on your interviewer. Find the similarity, attraction, bias, fuel. Find something that's a commonality between the two of you. Look for, and I don't just mean connections. Like, don't say, hey, you and I are both connected with so-and-so, because in LinkedIn, we connect with so many people now that that's not a guarantee that the other person's going to know. That's not a good signal that we need to talk. What you do need to do is say, hey, I've noticed you've been posting on this thing, or I see that you are involved in this kind of work. I read a really great article that has helped me dive deeper into X topic, and I thought you might like it too. Here you go. And then don't expect a response. Like, don't expect it, because if you keep sending these out and people aren't responding, you're going to take it personally, and that's not it at all. Like, people are just busy, right? But one, like I said, never give them homework. Two, be a resource for them. Be useful and helpful and show that you are genuinely interested in making a connection, building a relationship with that person. And three, wait for your ask. You can only make an ask if they respond favorably, and then you have some sort of rapport with them, some sort of conversation with them. And then you can hit them with a soft ask. Yeah, you can hit them. That sounded like I said soft ass. Edit that out. You can hit them with the soft ask. And that is, don't say, can I pick your brain for 30 minutes? Can we have a coffee chat? Don't do that either. Don't, informational interviews are dying because, again, nobody has time for those. Be of value and seek micro advice for them. Hey, I'm working on such and such project, and I want to make sure I'm on the right track. And ask them one question to give you guidance. Build the relationship little bits at a time and demonstrate who you are, not I'm desperate, I'm reaching out right now, I need something. And that's really hard to do, especially when you're desperate and you need something right now. But I promise you, you're going to protect your energy if you are much more intentional about showing your humanity and your value and being the person who you kind of need in your life right now is somebody of value, right? And that's when you're going to get more people writing back to you, which again, I have all of these templates. So let's chat. I have all of this worked out. Copy and paste. Yes, I know it's copy and paste, but there are placeholders to make it really personalized and warm. And it takes the guesswork and the thought work off of kind of the initial reach out. So let's chat.
And we'll make sure that we put that. I will make sure that I put that in the episode and show notes.
Please.
So there are always a wealth of resources down below in the show notes. So just make sure that you're always checking those out too. Okay. So to close up our interview today, I'm going to say one thing we didn't talk about was we didn't talk about anything personal about this, but Steph and I jumped on a call last week. We were going to record, but I was heading to Australia to the Canva HQ and we found out that we have babies that are exactly almost the same age, literally just 2 days apart. So we connected on a lot of levels. And I will say this, we didn't know each other prior to recording. I did a warm, not really, more like a cold reach out to bring Steph on to the podcast. So I guess if you take anything from anything is that networking is essential for everybody, no matter where you are in your career. And it can really bring a lot of value. So I'm hoping that you got a lot of value from this today. But to wrap up this interview today, what is a really big tip or trick for anyone who's watching this to make their transition out of the classroom a reality? I know it's a loaded question, but if you had to give a couple of tricks, what would they be?
I love loaded questions, and they're not tricks. It is a tried and true step-by-step system. Step one, do your research on any company. Okay. We know that you're going to apply. We know that you're going to find roles, but you have to do your research. Okay. Narrow down what is it not, what can I do? What do I want to do? Go after the roles you are actually interested in. Step three, tailor your application materials to that role. Do not spray and pray. Step four, network. I'm going to say it again. Step four, network. Step five, prepare for your interviews. Over prepare. Always over prepare. And then move forward. I mean, it's literally that. Find the jobs that are available. Tailor your materials and your digital footprint. Network, network, network. I can help you with that. I can help you with all these steps. And then over prepare for your interviews. At every single step, make sure you are the person who is eyes wide open, what they're looking for, and then sing your own praises. Imposter syndrome be damned. Sing your praises and upskill where you need, and you're going to get where you're going to need to go.
All really, really great tips. And if you're not already following Steph, please make sure to do so. There's tons of resources that she shares. But if somebody was looking to connect with you, where is the best place to do so?
LinkedIn. I love LinkedIn. I'm primarily there. I'm on all of the other social media platforms, but LinkedIn is my all-time favorite just because it's so easy to share open jobs and tips and advice. Just like I said in the very beginning, all of that tactical, actionable advice, find me on LinkedIn.
Yep, you won't regret it, I promise you. All right, Steph, thank you so much for joining us today. And we will see you guys all next time.
Sounds great, Leena. What a wonderful session. And I look forward to hearing from all of your listeners.
Same. All right. Have a good day, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
All right. Thank you so much. You've made it this far. We are so thankful that you're here. Make sure to hit the subscribe button, thumbs up, comment below, and join us for all of our next videos. Thank you so much for joining us as we disrupt education together. See you guys soon. Bye, everybody.